Hey, I'm Guy.
I'm John.
It's our YouTube channel. Subscribe to it. Give this video a like.
We have a podcast in the description as well. Subscribe to that.
We are sponsored by Tito's Handmade Vodka.
Yep, based in Austin, Texas, American-made, #1 vodka in America, Tito's.
You said to me Sunday night, you're like, does Shanahan look just kind of miserable on the sideline? And I said, yes. And then watching Urban Meyer on Monday Night Football on the Jag sideline, he makes Shanahan look like a kid at a birthday party. And he is miserable, John.
Do you think you worked in radio for a long time, now you're a podcaster. Do you think there are a lot of similarities in the two businesses?
Yeah, I actually do.
Yeah, it's not a crazy hard transition, right? There are just things that are the same, right? Doing topics, getting people interested, interacting with your audience. I mean, there are some basic premises of the business. I've said all along, man. Now, I never worked at Ohio State or Florida, but when I went from Fresno State to the NFL, it was like a completely different world. They really, the businesses, beside running plays, like running a counter play or a go route, like, yeah, that's the same thing as like you would have saw. I guess you wouldn't have seen it like back calling a Clovis East game in like 2006 because they ran the triple option. But, you know, some of those, like the high school teams that run spread offenses, like they can do the same thing as an NFL team. But the business is completely different. And also, when you get an NFL job, for the most part, you're taking over a shitty team, right? Like even what Jim Harbaugh took over, a 6-10 Niner team, it was kind of unique because they had all these Pro Bowlers on the roster, and then he hit this incredible draft, and he resurrected Alex Smith. Like that is an anomaly. You look back at Pete Carroll's first couple of years; they were awful in Seattle. Urban Meyer's lost like 5 games in the last like decade. His team looks terrible. Like just what would you guess? 5-12 feel about right?
Do you think they win 5 games this year?
Well, I don't know. That actually felt kind of high when I said 5. Like 3-14. That's a lot of losses.
Feels more like 3 to me.
Okay, 3-14. That is a long season, man.
What's their over/under?
That is a horrendous. I think it's like 7. Maybe it's 6.5.
Yeah, right here I got 6.
Yeah, so maybe you get the extra bump with the extra game. I don't know. I felt looking at his face like he wants to quit. But back to what I was saying, like hiring someone like Jim Harbaugh played in the NFL for 15 years. Pete Carroll, we talk about him like he was a college coach. You know that he's been a head coach 3x the NFL teams relative to USC. He'd been a head coach for 2 different NFL teams before he became the USC head coach. And then it's like, oh, you're college coach Pete Carroll. Well, kind of. I bet Pete Carroll always like, I'm a fucking NFL coach. I just dominated at USC, right? He had been a coordinator in the pros for a long time. He was a pro guy. Matt Rule is like he had the 1 year with the Giants, but even that, like at least he spent 1 year in an NFL building. I think Chip Kelly and Urban Meyer have a lot of parallels. 0 years in the NFL, absolutely 0. Like not one. It's one thing to be friends with Belichick. It's another thing to like coach against him. Did you see the stat that Phil Yates tweeted? Sirianni next to Belichick. And it says Sirianni, 40 years old. Belichick, 47th year in the NFL. 47th year in the NFL. That means there is literally not probably a coach, but definitely a player who Belichick, and I've said this forever, strengths, weaknesses off the top of his head immediately. A guy in a 2 deep in the league. From what college he went to, how good he was in college, and what his strengths and weaknesses are in the NFL. Just think about that ability that like Urban Meyer, like how is Urban going to know like if he was just playing Trey Lance? What the fuck would he know about Trey Lance? Let alone like Katavius Street and Brandon Ayuk, right? You just don't even know.
Or what about when you just have to, a couple guys get hurt and you got to add somebody to your team? Even if you have a GM that's in charge of that, he adds a guy to your team. If you've been around the league for a few years, let alone 47, you know what you're getting in that player because maybe that player's been in the league for 5 years, right? So even if Trent Baalke is the guy who grabs the guy off the wire and puts him on the squad and you roll out to practice Monday, Urban's never seen the guy, but fine. Trent's job is to find that guy. Tuesday, you roll out to practice, got Monday off because they won a game. He has no. What's his point of reference for that player? Never seen him before.
Do you think any player at Ohio State or Florida ever came on without Urban having a deep understanding of the human?
No.
At practice, Randy Mueller told me
I
one
bet even
time.
their walk-ons were like, he knew the dad.
100. Randy Mueller told me one time, who was Saban's GM for the Miami Dolphins. He said an underrated thing that Nick could never shake is like, Nick, we need this guy here for afternoon practice. I'll just pick the best practice squad guy. You don't worry about this. You stay in the game plan. And Nick wanted to watch the top 10 short list of them all and watch them all. He's like, you don't have time to do that. I stumbled upon this press conference the other day. I actually sought it out because it was Dan Campbell. I enjoy Dan Campbell press conferences. He's actually much smarter than I think people think. I swear, just if you're bored. He's like, whoever their GM is, the Rams guy that they hired. He's like, I told him early on in training camp, I'm like, listen, I forget the guy's name, but he's like, if we need, I don't know. If we need a guy, I trust you. If like I'm not around, I'm in a team meeting or whatever, like
Brad
you
Holmes.
need to, if a guy, Brad Holmes, he's like, I told Brad, I trust you, bro. Like you've been in the league for a long time. You know what you're doing. If we need a practice squad guy and I don't have the ability to sign off or give you the thumbs up, just do it. And it was just very kind of like, yeah, I bet Sean Payton told him things he learned, right, from Sean Payton to like, sometimes Mickey's got to bring in a guy for practice squad guy. I don't have time. And I just don't see how Urban, and think about the factor too of Trent Baalke guy. Like, it's not like Trent is Mr. Cuddly and easy to work with historically.
John, let's tell the people about DraftKings. Download the app, use the promo code HAM, and try the Instant Win Challenge from DraftKings. Wild cards, you're shot at up to $50 million in prizes.
What about our friends at Manscaped.com, the best ball trimmer on the market? Promo code HAM gets you 20% off and free shipping.
I wonder, too, if we don't know if Matt Rule has succeeded or not yet. Time will tell. But if being the coach at Florida and Ohio State, that's even very different than being at Baylor, where you don't get the first pick of all the players, right? In some ways, that's more NFL. If you're coaching at a school that's not Ohio State, Florida, USC, Texas, where you just get the first, you can get any player you want. Like, one thing I was thinking watching Urban last night, if this was college and Urban had just inherited a terrible team, I know what his roster would look like next year. Freaking stacked. You'd be like, whoa, changed everything real fast. You're handcuffed. Like, you are, unless you can coach your way out of it or you've got the players on the roster that can do it for you, right? It turned out Jim Harbaugh's team, a lot of good players on that team when he took over the 49ers, right?
Well, and he had Vic Fangio as defensive coordinator.
If
and
Urban
say what you want
Meyer
about
had
Greg
taken
Roman,
over
Greg
those
Roman's
49ers, he'd have a shot. He'd have a shot. But he didn't take over those 49ers. Because most people don't take over those 49ers.
Would you agree, though, his shot would probably be, like, Jim was probably even more suited, though, because of the coming from Stanford, NFL guy. I do think Urban, he's an all-time great college coach. In a weird way, might be completely over his head in this.
Jim also,
and not because timing,
if Jim came into the NFL today, it might be a little harder, right? The style of offense that Jim wants to run, like, worked right in that moment in time. He's been trying to figure his offense out.
And the team was equipped to do it.
Yeah, an offense that should work at Michigan, except he is now the coach at Michigan at a time when you got to open it up and let it fly, and that's very different.
I know. You can, to me, you could see it on Urban's face. Like, there's guys that are like, this is going to be tough, and there's like, did I make the wrong decision? Like, do you see that in his eyes?
I saw him thinking, what I saw was, how do I get out of this? And I don't mean get out of this job. I mean, how do we fix this? Like, before I can't take this anymore, because I might run out of patience before this thing can get fixed. Because this idea, like Trevor Lawrence is going to take over, just carry the team, like that ain't happening.
Well,
I think Travis Etienne's out for the year. That's the other thing.
Well, I also think it shows you, kind of puts into light how special Luck was for how much shit he got. Like, is he really that good? He is so much fucking better than every rookie quarterback who's come into this league for decades. What are we talking about? He took over a joke team and took over the playoff. They won 2 games. 2. They picked him number 1. And then it turns out the coach and the GM were kind of clowns. And he carried the franchise for like 3 straight years. Think about that. Like, I think sometimes that gets lost because it's so easy. Trevor Lawrence, next Luck. No, he's not. And honestly, he could be really good one day. It's going to take some time, though.
Yeah.
You got DJ Chark on the sideline because he's injured.
You got Minshew like still trying to win the job.
Well, because Urban
Very
keeps
weird.
telling him that.
Well, I know.
I always think it's just crazy luck. It's a weird deal. We talked a little bit about this before we got on. Travis Etienne basically started the moment he got to Clemson. And when he showed up 3 years ago at Clemson, right, they are in the peak of their powers. Like, they're just humming. They've already won a natty. They're just recruiting like Alabama or Ohio State. Plays immediately, dominates for 3 straight years. I think maybe last year he got banged up or a little bit, but he's never been like serious injury out for. He comes by the second preseason game, his foot is shattered. Liz Frank out for the year. Like, how's that happen? That's just, to me, crazy. Is it just wear and tear? Is like a tire was going to pop? Like, if he could have gone back for a senior year, maybe it happens. I don't know.
He was a 4-year player.
Oh, he was? Oh, yeah, he did go back for senior year, huh? So maybe he's got some extra tread on the tire.
Almost 5,000 yards rushing in college and almost 1,200 yards receiving.
He dominated.
So that's 788 touches in college.
But to me, does it speak to Urban? Which makes sense, right? If you're at Ohio State, you bring in a Travis Etienne every year. And when you bring in a Travis Etienne, a 5-star guy from fucking Ohio or Florida or whatever, that guy doesn't get to start right away. Like, it might take a year or two for Zeke to start, right? He's behind Carlos Hyde or whatever. So, for example, he takes Etienne in the first round. Then he has him playing third-string running back. Like, to me, I red flag that immediately. Like, Urban, this isn't the college. Like, this guy is a blue chipper. You draft him first round. He should be mixing in with the ones.
The guy in front of him is not a 4-star guy from 2 years ago who's now getting his chance.
No, the guy in front of him is Carlos Hyde, a guy that's bounced around the league who just happened to play for you. Now, the starter, good player, James Robinson, but you should be mixing those two guys in and just be like, we're going to have an elite, those two guys are going to play together. And now they basically just, I mean, it's not their fault that he got injured, but it does like kind of ruin one of the Ramsey picks, right? You trade Jalen Ramsey, and then all of a sudden you have nothing to show for it for a year.
Solomon Jets 718 on YouTube. The painful part about seeing Urban Meyer's struggle face last night was that the players behind him were laughing and joking around on TV. I see this comment is why that camera that everybody's in love with, that like only puts one person in focus and the rest of it is blurry in the background, and everyone's like, oh, it's the 8K camera. It looks like a video game. That's why that camera is overused. Because if you're using that camera, you don't see all the good shit that happens in the background on TV. Just my 2 cents. I think people are too in love with that camera. It looks sweet, but you miss out on funny stuff happening in the background.
I'm with you. I agree. I'm in agreement there.
Anyway, what's their first? Do you have the Jags schedule in front of you, by the way? Give me like their first 4 weeks.
I have the Jets up. Let's go, Jags. I bet it's not pretty. It is at Texans, so he could be 1-0. You lose the Texans, that'd be hard to shake, right? Is that a must-win?
Remember they beat Texans? The Colts week 1 last year?
The Broncos. So you got at Texans, Broncos at home
kind of
opener.
A must-win for the Broncos.
Cardinals. Sneaky hard game for the Cardinals. 10 a.m. kickoff. Jacksonville hot. At Bengals. So it's doable.
I mean, they did win one game last year. Their schedule should be kind of easy. One game or
so
two?
They lost
one game.
I thought they lost 15 straight games.
Yeah. No.
Started 1-0. Had to be a pretty good feeling.
That's one of the. I mean, for the Colts, it turned out to be good. Just it does goes to show when we talk about like, oh, you can't play Trey Lance week 1. You just got to beat the Lions. Like you reminded me this the other day. We say it every year. Week 1 can just be freaking weird in the NFL. So